So, completely easy. So, alright, so hi guys, thanks so much again for watching the video. Again, as usual, my name is Eric, but I have a guest with me today, Sydney. So,
Thanks for having me.
no problem. So Sydney, first, I guess just introduce yourself and your channel and everything.
Yeah, definitely. So, my name is Sydney Davis Jr. Jr. I'm the host of a podcast called Growing Up Fundy. I also have a YouTube channel where Eric has been on one of my live streams before. That's how we first connected. I interview people who are both religious and non religious and from all religious backgrounds Christianity, members of Islam, the Nation of Islam, any religious background, any sect, any denomination about what it was like growing up in the faith and then how that's impacted who they are today. Many of the people are still religious, some are not, some have changed religions. And then I also talk to people who are experts in religion tangential fields like psychology and history and anything that is sometimes associated with religion too. And yeah, and that's pretty much my whole thing, my whole brand right there. And then I have too many parrots and I live in Nashville. Those are the
Hey,
interesting
no
facts.
problem. And you also have a dog, right? Or
Yes, I also have a dog. Yeah, she
and
she was right here a minute
yeah,
ago. Yeah.
it's a Staffordshire Terrier, I think, right?
Yep.
Or,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, she is. Her
cool.
name's
Awesome.
Godzilla. Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cute. Animals are always cute. I have two cats, so
Yep. Yep. You
so
get it.
yeah, no, animals are always awesome. So, and by the way, how long has your specific podcast been going on for? Like,
It started in December of 2021. So I think that's about 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. We're on season 3.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, season three. That's always third time's a charm. So,
Yeah. I think I might have uploaded the 155th or 56th episode this week, I think.
totally, totally. And I guess your goal in doing this podcast, is it just to bring like education? Is it just to be as well as entertainment and anything like that? So
Yeah, so I've discovered and I'm not the person that discovered this, but in my life I discovered that people fear what they don't know. Right? People fear Islamic terrorists. People fear evangelical Christians. Christians fear atheists. People fear things that they're unfamiliar with. And so I like to get people as familiar with belief systems and people that they normally wouldn't either find in their area or in their friend group. They wouldn't have an opportunity to talk to. I've interviewed Satanists and people who I imagine, I don't want to assume, but I imagine, Eric, you probably don't run into many Satanists just casually that you know of.
no, no,
Right.
can't say I've ever run
Right.
into a Satanist.
Right.
Although interestingly enough, while we're since you brought up Satanists, I actually didn't. I literally thought that they worshiped Satan for a while, and
Yeah.
a lot of the time, like I'm like, wait, so they don't? Like, why are they
Nope.
called Satanists? And
That's a
yeah,
great question.
yeah,
And
no,
it's
very
that
interesting.
exact kind of thing that makes me want to talk to him to help people understand that what we think we know, the stereotypes we think we know, sometimes are true and sometimes could not be further from the truth. Or sometimes, like rumors and stereotypes start from things that maybe were true at one point in history, but are
Right.
no longer true. So I just talk to a whole bunch of really interesting people all the time.
Cool. Yeah, and I know you also have some scientist experts as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, I guess I'll maybe ask you a few other questions later, but I guess
Yeah.
we'll ask sort of the biggest reason, the biggest question. So essentially, I guess, what are, in your experience, some of the biggest reasons why people leave, particularly Christianity, whether that's like evangelical Christianity, you could even throw in Catholicism or any
Mhm.
of the major branches that, I guess, any of the more conservative branches, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah. So, in speaking to people, and from my own perspective as well, I think that one of the main reasons people begin to question their faith or begin to question whether or not they want to remain involved in the Western Christian denominations are I think they start by the confusion. I think a lot of times there are between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there are details that don't necessarily line up. There are like plot holes, if you will. I think also and this has been told to me as well, there are things that don't make sense to them from a biological standpoint. For example, if you have a child with your sister, they're probably going to have a lot of biological problems, a lot of neurological issues, but somehow also all of creation, all of men came from the same two people,
Right.
right? Just
Yeah.
things like that, I
Creation.
think. For example, one argument I've heard is somebody's son asked them, how did all of the methane present on the ark not suffocate everyone and all the animals? Just things like that, I think. And that's what makes people question. But I think what makes people leave is the response they get to those questions or the lack of. So, for example, in some churches, a child might ask a question like that and either be given an answer that they don't necessarily feel is an answer, or they're told, stop asking those questions. It makes you sound like you're allowing the devil to, enter your mind and your heart.
Right.
And while I know that's not every Christian and that's not every church, that does seem to be a lot of where these questions begin and these thoughts and these negative responses begin when somebody does eventually leave the church. Now, whether or not that moment is the moment they leave the church, very likely not. But it's a series of moments similar to that where questions aren't treated the way that a question should be treated. Curiosity isn't necessarily supported in the way curiosity should. And then on top of that, you have things like purity culture and the difference in purity culture for men versus purity culture for women, and the things
Mhm.
that women are told in a lot of Western Christian churches that men aren't told, and just
Right.
imbalances like that that make people finally throw in the towel and say, for a lot of these churches who claim to love everyone,
Right.
there's not a lot of love that they find and that they experience there.
Yeah, and I know that because I know also that a lot of different churches, like, because it's essentially the first domino that in a row of
Right.
things. Like if it could be either one of those things, it doesn't even
Right.
necessarily have to be in that order, I guess. Because
Right.
yeah,
Right.
totally, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, no, because and yeah, it's very extreme. I mean, a lot of the horror stories that I heard, because when I started researching like a lot more, and I started to analyze a little bit of the atheist community, and and I almost didn't believe the stories because I'm from Jersey,
Right.
and I don't know, we're
Right.
just like chill up here, and just that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like you had this purity ball or something, and this other thing, and I'm like, because that was. I just like my jaw hit the floor after, and then I kept hearing the same person saying it, and I'm like, well, I mean, this many people saying these things, and then even sometimes even some Christian sites even admitted, yeah,
Yeah.
this is maybe something we shouldn't do, guys, or this or
Yeah.
anything. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, there are definitely it definitely is a lot of horror stories that go into it, and in many ways, and sadly, there's a lot of trauma that can be induced that many people never fully recover from.
Right.
But
Right. And it's how people's trauma is responded to, I think, that makes them leave the church.
totally, and and actually, I plan on doing some more videos on purity culture a little bit, but so, and I know you mentioned a few of the differences between like how women are treated versus
Right.
men are treated. So, um, and by the way, I know that it's a bit about sex, so don't feel you can censor. You don't have to censor yourself, so
Okay.
you can do whatever you want. But yeah, you can. So, what are some of the differences, I guess, between like specifically like between men and women?
Yeah.
How they manifest, at least most commonly.
That's a really good question. So, despite the fact that the Bible says if you look upon a woman inappropriately, you should spoon your own eyes out, right? Jesus
Yeah.
himself said that. There is an odd commonality between churches that basically make it the woman's job to not lead the man astray, especially in Western
Mm.
Christian cultures. I know you find this in other cultures, but I can't speak
Right.
firsthand on those. Um, but for example, if your skirt is a certain length, if your shoulders are showing, if your cleavage is showing, that is you as the woman tempting men in a way that they wouldn't be tempted otherwise. And
Mm,
in a lot of stories that you hear about young women being groomed in churches, it always starts
mm,
with, well, that man of God would not have acted that way. He's a man of God. He's been involved in this church for years.
right,
You've only been here for 15 years or 18 years. You must have acted in a way or dressed in a way that led him astray. And there's also a much larger emphasis put on the purity of women versus the purity of men.
right,
With the men, what they're told is you want to share that experience for your life partner because it's important, and also you don't want to get an STD.
yeah,
With women, it's more of a you are not clean, you're not
mm,
pure, your value is diminished. It's a much different message. While the importance is still there, and abstinence culture
right,
is still heavily promoted in these churches, the reasoning behind it is so much different for men and women. And women are basically, and not basically, they are told that their personal value as a human being is wrapped up in their purity. So not only do you have this pressure to remain pure, whatever
right,
that means, depending on what you were told
yeah,
until marriage, but then nobody is there to help you after marriage when you're no
yeah,
longer pure, and you're just supposed to be okay with it, right? So they put this value on you, and then they just expect you to be cool with not having that value after your wedding night anymore. And
yeah,
so where people think, purity culture wouldn't be a problem if you just wouldn't sleep around before you get married, they don't understand that it negatively impacts women even after their wedding day. When their wedding day is over and it's the day after their wedding, they're aware that everyone knows they are no longer pure, and that's been taken from them. And it's this weird overexposure. It's this weird vulnerability that you have now where everyone around you knows that your purity has been taken from you. And it's violating, and it's gross, and it's weird. And with men, it's more of a share this experience with your wife and, don't get HIV or something. But it's less of a you'll be lucky to find a woman who will accept you if you have lost your virginity. And with men, it's more of you're easier to be forgiven as a man because you know what? You stumbled in sin. And even though you committed this sin, as long as you take a vow to not sin like that anymore,
mm,
basically you'll be fine. But with women, it's like, whoa, good luck, broodmare,
yeah,
finding a man that's fit for
right,
you.
yeah,
And it also convinces women that certain emotional and physical abuse is allowed because they weren't as valuable. So the man is doing them a favor by marrying them. So they should be okay with certain treatment. And it goes so much deeper than stay a virgin until you're married.
yeah. And just want to go back to something you said. So they still consider you impure even if you just have sex on your wedding night and that sort of
Well,
thing. So,
yeah, but that's the thing though. That's where purity culture is harmful is
hmm,
people don't prepare young women for that thing. So the woman feels impure. She's
ah,
because she's been told her whole life
okay,
that the only way you're pure is if you're a virgin, and
right,
everybody's just like, "Oh, but it's fine when you do it on your wedding night." But they don't explain it. They don't
ah,
give do you see what I'm saying? Like they
yeah, no,
don't give
I see it
any
now.
kind of. So even though she did it right, it's like it's over.
Mm,
That's it. Like
okay,
the value that she was told was so important the first 2 decades of her life is no like it's gone. So now what?
right, yeah, no, that's intense.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no. And don't worry, I won't make you talk about Bill Gothard because he makes me, because I know you particularly despise him. But in any case, so I guess also since I know you watched the video that I sent you about Matt Walsh,
Mhm.
and he essentially says like we have to be so strong and uncommitted essentially, and because we weren't committed before, and that's why these things have happened. I mean, how accurate do you think that assessment even is? Like, do you think? I don't know. Just I guess
So
your thoughts.
I'll say this. Everyone, even devout evangelical Christians, everyone needs to be cautious of Matt Walsh and
Mm,
men like Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is not he's not who he says he is. Matt Walsh is a brand, and he's a money-making company. And
Mm,
he will say what will make him money to say.
right.
So even if you watch a couple videos of his and you're like, yeah, I agree, I guess I agree with that. A broken clock is correct twice a day.
Right.
And so my first thought in terms of Matt Walsh himself specifically
Hmm.
is take everything he says with a grain of salt. Everything because he touts himself as a Christian.
Hmm.
He touts himself as a talking head for Christians and the Bible and
Yeah.
people who are true Christians, right? He gets pretty intense with
Yeah.
what it really means to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Um, and he is the type of person that you should worry about the most. People will tell you that people like me are the people you should worry about the most, that are open about not
Right.
believing in God and not being a Christian. But the person you should fear the most, or not even fear, I wouldn't even say be afraid of him, be
Right.
wary of him, is the man who uses your beliefs to try and get what he wants out of
Yeah.
you,
Mm,
and to falsely use Christianity and the Bible and religion to promote himself, to promote his brand, to promote his channel, whatever it is. Because if you'll watch, he has a lot of staunch opinions and he has a lot of loud and proud, staunch views that he does not talk about until they're in the news.
oh,
And
really?
he talks about them, and you think, well, that's because he covers, current events. No, he knows what's trending and he knows what will get him clicks, and he knows what side of that coin will also get him a lot of views. So,
Mm,
for example, if he knows that, say, trans rights or trans
yeah.
ideology of some sort is in the news right now, not only will he make sure he makes a couple of videos about that, but he will make sure he picks the most inflammatory side of that argument. He will make sure that he takes the stance that is the one that's going to get the libs riled up the most, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows that the people that are mad about it will click on him, and he knows that the people who agree with him will click on him, and he knows the people that don't know enough about it to have a dog in that fight will
Mm,
also click on him because they're like, why is everybody so upset about this? So even though there might be some things that Matt Walsh says that maybe you, for example, agree with, I
right.
would be very wary of supporting him
Right.
versus supporting a couple of videos that he's made on things that you agree with, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah. No. Okay. So basically, just don't like attach yourself to him too much. Just,
Yes.
I mean, it's okay if he makes a good point every now and then. You say, hey, this he got the right one, but at the same time, like if you basically are too attached to him, he's just gonna he is doing it basically for a lot of views and just
Yes.
hyping things up.
Yes. So, for example, he was not a fan at all of the He Gets Us
Right.
Super Bowl commercial. I
Hmm.
was also not a fan of that at all. But the reasons we're not fans of that, totally different. I could not disagree with him more on his reasoning for why it was a bad marketing move, why it was a bad commercial to air. While I was not a fan of it, and I have a lot of opinions I could talk about in terms of why I wasn't a fan, you might think like, oh, he and I agree on this. But if you watch what he says about it, his reasoning is totally different. And I could not disagree with him more. But his reasoning is also the inflammatory take. He made sure, instead of just making a video about what he didn't like about that commercial, he made sure to also use some key buzzwords that he knows algorithms are going to pick up on and send people his way. Um, and when you are looking for people to follow, when you're looking for people who you would like to be influenced by, which we all do. I've got lots of people that I watch that I'm like, "Hey, I admit that this person influences a lot of my thoughts and behaviors." You want to pick somebody who shows evidence of themselves being wrong on occasion, shows evidence of themselves changing their mind on occasion, shows evidence of themselves being confronted with questions they're not actually sure how to answer. When you go to Matt Walsh, he doesn't do any of those things. You will be hard pressed to find a video where he is ever wrong. Even if he is, he's not.
Yeah.
He's loud, he's proud, he says it with his whole chest, right? Somebody that I trust and somebody that I believe and somebody that I want to be influenced by is somebody who can say, that's a great question. I actually don't know. I've never been asked that before. Or this is a topic that's going to take me a while to decide how I feel about it. Or, I know in the past I made a video that said this. I gotta tell you, I was wrong, and here's a new video on me correcting myself. And so that's another issue that I have with somebody like him is even if he gets on and he makes a video and man, every word of that video, you're like, man, that really speaks to me. That's the same as me. That's how people like him kind of hook you. They make a video like that that's easy to agree with, where you're like, oh, yeah, the algorithms are right. They're bringing me where I need to be. And then they start the inflammatory stuff. They start the controversial stuff. They start the clickability stuff. And because you've enjoyed so much of what they've said in the past, or you felt like you agreed with so much of what they said in the past, you find yourself going, man, I like this guy. He wouldn't say something that's somewhat racist. He wouldn't say something that could be mistaken as, a little January 6th-ish. But he is, and he does. And that's how people get roped into those belief systems and those ideologies. Is it starts small. People think that it's, oh, I believe all this racist stuff he's saying. It's like, no. He starts with the little things that are easy to agree with, and then they work their way up. And then you're saying, like, yeah, I don't think women should be able to vote, like, I guess, for reasons,
Yeah. I honestly, if this was a few months ago, I would have said that was just, a bit of paranoia. But then I was like, but recently, I mean, I don't know if you've seen Pearl Davis or anything. Well, okay. Well, sorry, stupid question. Of course you've seen Pearl Davis. Everybody
who hasn't? I was going to say, who hasn't?
Yeah, no. But yeah, no. And I was like, oh, well, she thinks that. But yeah, no, and it's a very good point that, eventually somebody who is, a bit more, shall we say, nefarious, and I don't know Matt Walsh's true intentions, but, it basically can show a pattern where, if they do a little bit of incrementalism where they'll get you used to a full thing, but, if you take a little sip of, the Kool-Aid, but if you took it all at once, you'd be like, get this away from me.
Right.
Right. And then, but yeah, no, and that's a good point. So I guess, I know you said you disagree with a lot of his reasoning as to why the He Gets Us campaign is just not good. So I guess what is more wrong with his reasoning, I guess, just summarize it, I guess. So.
Yeah. So the way that he put it is he said that he had a problem with, for anybody who hasn't seen the He Gets Us campaign that was aired during the Super Bowl, it was a montage of modern day settings where one person was washing the feet of the other. And in these scenes, it's some of them are pretty inflammatory. Like some of them are making a very political statement. Some of them are making a lesser political statement. But for example, there's like a cop washing the feet of a black man. Things like that, where it's like, okay, I get what they're saying. They're taking the quote unquote enemies and they're having them wash the feet of the people that normally would be their enemy or the person against them, something like that. There's a woman getting her feet washed outside of an abortion clinic, right, by somebody who we can assume was protesting, just things like that. And then it says Jesus didn't hate, he washed feet. And that's it. That's the whole thing. There's not dialogue or anything in it.
There's a background song, I think, in there too.
But. Right. Yeah, it was just music. It was just a montage. And so Matt Walsh's problem was that, one, there's only one scene in the Bible where Jesus washes anybody's feet, and it's his disciples before the Last Supper. And he was saying, if that's like one scene in the Bible, it's not even the whole thing. And if you come to church thinking that that's how you're going to get treated, that we're just going to bend down and wash your feet, then you're coming for the wrong reasons. And then he made a whole deal about how you don't see any black people washing white people's feet in the commercial. And I thought that was literally the worst take I have ever heard in my whole life. But I know that he was saying it because he wanted me to say that was the worst. He doesn't think that. He does not think that. He knew that he could get on and be like, so why aren't black people washing white people's feet? If you're going to have equality, why aren't we having... Because he knows exactly what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he knows the fire that he's stoking. One, obviously, if I have to explain the history of slavery to you and how I hope a black person never washes another white person's feet again because we made them do that kind of thing for hundreds of years, right? Like, that's a whole discussion. But what he wants is he wants people like me, you know, liberal, leftist, atheist people to be like, how dare you, Matt Walsh? That's offensive. I'm going to go in your comments and leave all this stuff about slavery because he has a monetized YouTube channel, right? And because
his algorithm going.
Right. And then I'm going to share that link and be like, this is the most disgusting thing. And then my liberal friends are going to watch it and he's going to make more money and we're all going to go, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been in debate long enough to know when somebody actually believes something versus when someone knows that something is a valuable opinion to have, whether it's valuable because of morals and ethics or whether it's valuable because it'll get them clicks on their, you know, it's no different than those YouTubers that have the thumbnails that are like, oh no, I ate poison, you know, and there's like a big shocked face and then you watch it. Right. So he knows what he's doing, but that's why that was the reason why his hot take bothered me, because it was so disingenuous. I was watching it being like, you are the worst actor ever. But of course, his comments were blown up with people being like, that's right, Matt Walsh. Like, that it's not equality until we see that. It's like, he knows exactly what he's doing, right? And then he also he talked a lot about how, like, if serving people is why they come to the church and why they're brought to the church, they're being brought for the wrong reasons, which I think is just a bunch of baloney, right? Like, if somebody actually walks into a church thinking they're going to get their feet washed, in this pretend world where that happens, somebody walks in, they're like, I thought I was going to get my feet washed here. There are lots of people on Craigslist that'll do that for you. Just tell them. Just be like, go to Craigslist. Lots of people will do it for free. They'll pay you to do it. But that's like, he acts like he's never had to deal with a confused person before.
Yeah, right. I've noticed that too, where essentially he'll say in a very calm and very methodical tone, like, you know, I just can't understand why this is this and this. I mean, and then he'll just do that. Right.
Matt Walsh acts like a man who's never had to work in customer service before in his life, where somebody comes to Chick-fil-A looking for curly fries. It's like, so you tell them that's not how it works here, and they're confused. I don't understand. What's the problem? What's the problem here? And then he also said, you know, everybody knows that Jesus didn't hate, so he basically was saying the trailer was not pandering towards people who need to be led to the Lord. It was pandering towards like left-wing media, basically, which I also couldn't disagree more, because I think, in my opinion, like leftist media and woke media is the last place you're going to find religious imagery. So I get, like, he's saying, oh, this is leftist, because, again, the word leftist will pick up algorithms. The word left-wing, the word woke, that'll all pick up algorithms. But if you want to know the truth, the only people who use those words, the only people who use the word woke, are people who already agree with him. So he's not even saying anything that's gonna, like, he's not even saying anything controversial, because the only people who are searching the word woke and using the word woke on Facebook are people who already agree with the things that he's saying. Or if they don't already agree, they're going to hear him say it and they're going to decide that they agree. So even in having a hot take, even in having a hot controversial take, he doesn't, because he's saying these things in the bubble with everyone else who says these things. And so he does a wonderful job with his voice, with his, I imagine he's a tall man, he looks like a tall man, whatever effect he uses to look like a tall man, with the production value of his podcast and his channel, he does a great job of making you feel like you should not question him.
Yeah.
Making you feel like you can trust him, making you feel like if you want to question him or push back on him, you're actually, you need to sit down and learn a thing or two. And that doesn't work with me. That doesn't I am not afraid of the man, right? I'm the kind of person who says that sounds like you're lying. Like you sound like a liar right now.
Yeah.
Because again, the kind of people typically who seek out advice columns and channels like his need guidance. And that's coming from someone who, I listen to a bunch of channels that would be considered like self-help guidance channels. But I also wouldn't be afraid, and I'm not afraid in moments where I can tell that they're pandering in a certain way, to go, ew, I'm not going to finish this episode. This is an ad for whatever, or this is clearly an audition for whatever show they want to be on, you know. And so he gets away with it because he's got a lot of money backing his voice, his brand, his image, and because he's not afraid of like being roasted in the media and being made to be a headline. He welcomes that. He's just he's the complete package and people believe him, unless you actually sit and listen to what he says and how he says it. And what it actually is he is controversial. He knows how algorithms work. He's generally considered attractive, and he has a well-funded brand backing his imagery. And when you, that's all it takes. That's genuinely all it takes to be considered a brilliant mouthpiece of today's time.
Yeah. No, that's really fascinating too, and I do notice, because a lot of episodes are coming to my mind when you describe it, because, and the funny thing is that when I looked at Matt Walsh in a documentary, I'm like, he looks so much thinner, like in so many ways. Like I just thought, I was like I was almost like, well, I mean, honestly, not to brag, but I think I could take him anyway, even if he was tall.
Yeah.
Again, I have boxing training as well as martial arts, but after that, after that, I'm like, he's a paper tiger. Like at that point when I saw him, and he's, I mean, he is. I mean, he's taller than me, but that's not hard to do because like I'm kind of short. But yeah, no, I do see, because again, he's behind his like sort of professor's desk in a way, and that's sort of how most of his episodes are framed.
Yeah, it's all marketing. It's all marketing. If you've got books in the background, if you've got a cup of coffee with your name on it, right? If you've got a nice desk and nice lighting, people, okay, I believe you. You're correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, and I do think I do think also, because he said, this is sort of the feeling I get, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, because he does want to perceive strength, and he wants to communicate strength, and he perceives that if Christianity is, say, failing, that, well, it's not strong enough, essentially, and because he said that Christianity's been pandering to people for years, which, I mean, we can talk about whether that's true or not, but I think that, again, he just simply thinks that we should just be so strong and so almost authoritarian in a way, to the point where, like, no, we have to just say absolutely this, what is what, nothing, don't even question us, or we will bulldoze you, essentially. Right. So I don't know if you'd agree with that analysis.
So he is, so for anybody listening, I've been involved in professional debate for many years. Mm-hmm. And he is the epitome of the person who, when they frame it as a statement, that makes it fact.
Mm.
And people like him, you used a good term when you said bulldoze. They are both literally and figuratively difficult to argue with
Yeah.
because one, they just don't stop talking. They just keep going.
Mm.
They think because they're saying something with a lot of gusto and like at a certain speed that
Right.
that makes them correct. And it tricks their audience into thinking they're right too. It's a fascinating thing. But if Matt Walsh genuinely cared about why people were leaving the faith, and if he genuinely wanted to stop people from leaving the faith, his channel would be focused on interviewing people on why they're leaving the faith and what could have been done differently in order to change that, which is kind of what I'm doing on
Yeah.
my channel, right?
Yeah.
Which is
No. I mean.
interesting.
Yeah. No.
Um,
That's so interesting. Yeah.
but he doesn't. But what he does recognize is that people leaving the church is a big talk right now. It's in the media on both sides. It's one of those rare topics you're going to find on CNN and on Fox, right?
Right.
You're going to find both because on CNN, you're going to have the atheists coming out talking about the harms. And on Fox, you're going to have Christians talking about the harms of atheists, right? So you're going to have you're going to have people on the extremes, right? We all know that extreme liberal person,
Yeah.
who's like just too much, just exhausting, who looks at me and says I'm a traitor because I'm too centrist, right?
Yeah.
And then we all know that Christian who other Christians are like,
Mm.
couldn't be me, right?
Yeah.
Like, mm-mm. But he knows that those types of people are big news right now, and
Yeah.
he knows that people are leaving the church right now. So he's decided that's going to be his business model for the time being. But again, if he actually cared, if Matt Walsh was like, it keeps me awake at night knowing that people are separating from God and separating from the church, and I want to help make this stop. The content he's making would be the last content he would ever make because it's so divisive and combative and not helpful. I would argue that people like Matt Walsh are actually harmful to the Christian cause and the Christian narrative. And we have those on the atheist side too. I was just talking to somebody last night about people who I think are harmful to the cause and why I think that. Um, but because he says things with such conviction and with such confidence, the people who typically follow people like him follow him because they're lacking in confidence.
Mm.
And so when they see someone with the confidence to say things that they're not confident enough to say out loud,
Right.
they're like, done. Yep. Subscribe, click. And then when he says something with the same confidence that they're not 100% sure they believe, they're much more likely to be like, no, that's my boy. That's my boy,
Yeah.
Matt Walsh. He's never led me astray. Right. And a follower of Christ wouldn't be wrong about that either. So I just need to trust in him and believe that God wouldn't lead me astray by introducing me to somebody like Matt Walsh. And
Mm.
then the next thing you know, you got people storming the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah.
Like, that's how that happens. And I'm not saying like, I know that's a great soundbite, but I'm not saying Matt Walsh is the reason the Capitol got
Right.
stormed.
I figured. Yeah.
But talking heads like him, yes. Yeah.
Mm.
And I bet he's got some controversial takes on that too. If you look deep enough, I bet he does. I bet if
Oh
you
yeah.
go back in time and watch some of I bet he does. I bet he's got some inflammatory and controversial takes on what happened on January 6th.
Yeah. No. And of course he is like super gung ho about Trump and everything else, and obviously, you can't really be a conservative at that point and not be,
Right.
or at least you have to pretend and stay out of everybody's way who's gung ho about Trump. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, and also again, he did say that essentially because I'll just ask this one more question about that other specifically his video on the he gets us thing, but would I guess just to get your view on it, would you say that you would be far more likely to, like, even if like a Christian say didn't have every answer you had, at least it like if they at least entertained the thought of, hey, you know what, maybe I'll look that up, or I don't have this answer. I take it you'd be much more likely, and many people you've interviewed would be much more likely to say, okay, well, I'll stick around.
Yeah, I probably would have stuck around a little bit longer.
Hmm.
But for me personally, I think eventually I would have wound up where I am.
Okay.
It now the difference is, and the difference for a lot of people, I think, is they wouldn't look back in pain. It would be like the difference between breaking up amicably versus breaking up ugly.
Ah.
While I do think that breakup was destined to happen, I do think some people's brains are just destined to operate a certain way, and thoughts are just the thoughts gonna be thinking, you know? I think uh, people would there would be a lot less trauma related to leaving Christianity. It would be more of a they stopped going to church on Sundays and then eventually they just stopped engaging, right?
Right.
Um it would be less about I was traumatized, I was lied to, I was shamed, and more about I really just didn't want to get up on Sundays and I still have that question about the methane in the ark with all the
Yeah.
animals. Um, but I think many people would still have left. I think a lot of people would be in between. I think there would be a lot of people I've met a there's this population of people forming that they call themselves like Jesus followers and Christ followers, but they don't call themselves Christians because of what
Hmm.
they would need to identify with in order to be a Christian.
Right.
Um, I know a lot of people who say I really like the red letters in the Bible. I like the stuff that Jesus says, um, and I don't pay attention to the other stuff, like if your daughter's not a virgin on her wedding day, stone her in front of the village. You
Hmm.
know, if you marry a divorced woman, you're committing adultery, get
Right.
stoned in the village, right? Like
Yeah.
everything ends with getting stoned in the village. Um, Sodom and Gomorrah, not a fan of that story, right? So I think you would find a lot of people like that that are like, if Jesus was real, he seemed like a good dude, and I'm willing to follow the teachings of Jesus without necessarily calling myself a Baptist or a Methodist or a Christian. I'm a Christ follower, I'm a Jesus follower.
Right. Yeah. And I guess also, would you say that with regards to politics specifically, do you think like that would like because I know there's a lot of atheists who specifically say, well, I wouldn't care about this because anyway, but there's these political issues that I want to fight against. I mean, would you definitely say that that was a big reason why many people left as well? If they made center, like they made politics and this specific cause like the center of attention.
Yes, I think Trump's presidency drove a lot of people away from the church.
Yeah. Oh no,
I think that was a huge.
yeah,
Now,
unquestionably.
again, I'm not saying those people never would have left, but it probably would have taken another 15, 20 years.
Hmm.
But Trump drove a lot of people away from Christianity and a lot of people, especially here in the South, from the church because churches got to the point where they were saying, you're not a true Southern Baptist if you don't support Trump, or you're
Right.
not, if you vote for Biden, you're voting for sin, and
Yeah.
so and I also think a lot of like gender issues and things like that drove a lot of people away from the church because like I am not a transgender person. I cannot pretend to know what it's like to be a transgender person. I've had the opportunity to speak to some, but again, I still don't think that that makes me an authority in the space at all. But I
Okay.
also don't think that the pulpit should be telling you what your thoughts on that matter are either. I don't think your pastor should tell you how to feel about transgender people and people who choose to use different pronouns and things like that. That's to
Mhm.
me where it gets wild, where I'm like, why do you care? Why
Mhm.
do you care? Like, why does it matter? It would be different if the government said we're charging a trans tax and we're using all that money to go to trans people and everyone's being charged. At the moment where it's costing you money, you can have an opinion on it. But if it's not costing you money and if nobody's touching you in ways you don't want to be touched,
Mhm.
I struggle to see why
Why
somebody
you
would care. Yeah.
that? I mean, I think it would also be far more like you would still have the issue if they taught that, but the bigger issue is, of course, the political stuff behind it and trying to
Right.
impose that. Right.
Right. So imagine if you woke up one day and a bunch of atheist based laws had been passed.
Yeah.
And not only had atheist laws been passed, but they were written in a way that punishes you for being a Christian.
Mhm.
Like, you'd be scared, right?
Yeah.
You'd be like, wow, what is going on? This seems like a dystopian nightmare. This
Yeah.
seems like an Isaac Asimov novel. That's what it's like for a lot of people in this country every day. For people who are Jewish, for people who are Muslim, for people who are atheists, for people who are agnostic. It's like I woke up one day and I found out that in the state where I live, if I have a miscarriage, I can go to jail.
Wow.
And the legislation attached to that law quotes the Bible.
Ah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So, like,
Yeah.
our entire nation was founded upon supposedly the separation of church and state. So that's why that's important to me. I'm not anti Christian,
Right.
but I want to keep church and state separate. I don't want you to ever wake up in a world where you're not allowed to be a Christian.
Yeah.
I do not want that for you. I want you to be able to openly worship and pray and do whatever you want anywhere you want, whether it's in school, whether it's at the post office, whether it's at the grocery store. I want that for you. But I also want that for me. And I want that for somebody who's a member of the Nation of Islam. If they want to get down on the floor for their afternoon prayer and like go for it.
Totally.
I want that for everyone. I want my Wiccan friends to be able to do whatever they want. As long as nobody's touching anybody, as long as
Yeah.
nobody's harming each other's property, and as long as nobody's costing each other money, I would love to live in a world where all of us just get to do whatever we want. And that's the difference with people like Matt Walsh and people who follow people like Matt Walsh. And I don't mean follow like fascination follow. Like I
I
fascination
get.
follow a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they want a world in which their beliefs are imposed on other people. Now, I don't think he wants a lot of what he claims to, but he's supporting and he's inflating and he's like hyping up the people who really do, and he's getting them mad and he's getting them out there like doing what, like saying things and doing things they normally wouldn't if somebody weren't hyping them up.
Yeah.
Um
So he's an enabler, essentially.
yes, he's a supporter, he's an enabler. He's the guy like Trump who, if people do something in his name and they go to jail for it, he does not pardon them.
Right.
So many people thought Trump was going to pardon them and they are rotten in jail, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That is the type of person you need to be careful of. The Matt Walshes, where they tell you how to think, they tell you how to feel, they get you riled up. And then when you suffer the consequences of the actions they told you to take, they go, whoa, I don't know that guy.
Yep.
Whoa, I don't know that guy, right?
Or yeah, of course, yeah. No, and they'll even gaslight you into thinking, well, I didn't say that, or I didn't do this. I didn't. I have no idea how I could have possibly said or done anything of the sort. Like, yeah,
Yes, exactly. Or they pull the whole, this one is what really just boils my blood when they go, just because I said it doesn't mean you have to do it. Like freedom of speech,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I'm free to say whatever I want.
Yeah, that's just that is dumb in so many ways. I'll give you that one, but
Yeah. But it's legal.
Yeah,
That's the crazy. It's legal. They're not wrong, but it's infuriating.
yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, totally. And the other thing is that and I don't want to get into defending the red pill too much, but I will say that it does. They do have a point about one thing.
What's
is,
that?
Which is that I don't really think Matt Walsh cares nearly as much about the family structure as he claims, because I mean, while I do think Pearl can say some rather dumb things, I'll fully grant that. I mean, she isn't wrong that there are some laws that are just bad, and you'd think that they and the Daily Wire crew would do more about that sort of thing, but nobody cares. Like crickets, and it's all crickets. And for all my problems and disagreements with Pearl. I mean, she does. I mean, yeah. Look, she has some laws that are true, but
Broken clock.
yeah, right, exactly. Broken clock. Um, but they don't really want to change. They just kind of want to pass off to somebody else and get back to doing what they love, which is just it's provoking people and entertaining
Yes.
people and just
And they get clicks and they get shares and they get monetization. And even if it's all hate monetization, it still pays the bills.
right.
And another marker of somebody you should be careful of is the Bill Gothards, the Pearl Davises. Their advice doesn't work for them.
Yeah,
Bill Gothard was never married. Bill Gothard never had any kids that we know of,
yeah,
legitimate kids. And yet here he is saying the godly family has a dozen children, a quiver full of arrows, right?
yeah.
Marriage, babies, this, that. And that man was never married a day in his life. Pearl, pretty sure she's not married.
No,
And
she's not.
right. And
Yeah,
all she can talk about is what men want. What men want. And guess what? Men don't want Pearl.
yeah, no, don't. No, they
She's
don't.
invited to the boys' table because she's not threatening in any way. She's going to be the yes man. She's going to do whatever they want. But when it comes to marrying her, whoa, Pearl, it's not like that. We're just friends.
Yeah, and the funny, and also, I mean, what actually kind of shocked me is that just to hit on Pearl a bit, because she was recently having like a lot of live streams with this person, and she was like, because it was like this person who was a former OnlyFans model or something coming to Christ, and she was like, yeah, the person disowned their family disowned them or something when they were in OnlyFans. He's like, well, yeah. And the guy who was there said, "Well, yeah, of course they would disown her. Like, why wouldn't they?" And I'm like, I know a lot of parents who wouldn't, and it's ridiculous. Like,
Right.
I don't even. In fact, I don't even know of a single parent who would. I mean,
Right. Right.
I imagine though you have, unfortunately, in a lot of the trauma stories, but
Unfortunately, but those people tell on themselves in that way. When somebody says like, "Why wouldn't they disown them?" What he's saying is, "I would disown my child."
right, of course,
When they say like, "Why would a guy want that?" What they're saying is, "I don't want that." So those people are still important to listen to, but for totally different reasons.
right,
Because they're telling on themselves and they're showing you the red flags in terms of like, "Oh, this sounds very familiar. This sounds like that stuff Pearl's always talking about. I'm going to avoid this person," or whatever. So the people like the Matts and the Pearls, you want to keep them on your radar. Like I follow so many red pill channels because I want to know what they're saying.
yeah,
I want to know what they're thinking. I follow red pill women. I follow all this stuff because I want to know what the conversation is, right?
yeah,
Like what better way to know how to like not I don't even want to say argue, but what better way to prepare and answer questions than to know what the questions are that are being asked, right?
yeah,
Um and something that cracks me up about a lot of those communities is they give each other just the worst advice. I'm like, "Do you guys like each other? I thought you were
right,
supposed to be helping each other out. This is terrible, just baseline terrible advice."
yeah,
But you want to keep those people on your radar because it is wise to always know what's going on outside your bubble, even when
yeah,
it's not as extreme as things like Red Pill and the Matt Walsh. I just like knowing what's going on because the minute you stop consuming content that you don't agree with, one, you don't learn anything.
yeah,
Like I used to be that girl who had so many opinions but couldn't tell you a reason why. She just
right,
had them and they were loud and they were in your face. And then when people would be like, "Why? Where'd you learn that?" Well, I don't have to explain anything to you. It was awful. Um, but at least even if you don't agree with them, at least now you know why you disagree with them and you can
right,
answer that question and you can have that conversation. Also, it helps you learn these people can't hurt you. So
yeah,
like one of the reasons it's so easy for me to talk to people who have not only the opposite beliefs as mine, but I've had guests who have openly told me that like they do not like me, they do not like my beliefs, they think I'm going to hell.
mhm,
It's easy for me to talk to those people because opinions can't hurt me.
right, yeah,
Like I told one of my most recent Christian guests, I was like, look, if you're right, you won't see me in heaven. If I'm right, you won't see me in heaven. Why are you upset? I was like, either way, you won't see me in heaven. I don't understand. Like and so you can have conversations like that because it removes the need to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So, like, people can say anything, but at the end of the day, you're still who you are. You still believe what you believe. If anything, you're better armed because you know why you believe it, because you've been confronted with questions and thoughts and you've had to think about it and look into it. Um, just don't get tricked.
Yeah. No. Totally. And I used to be sort of the person who, when I was first looking into different videos that disagreed with me, I
Mhm.
would click on it. I would like watch a minute, and I would be bracing, like almost bracing for impact because of just the things. And I'm like, oh, and then, but now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm at least I feel enough to defend myself rather than just
Yeah.
well, for lack of a better term, but defend what I think.
Yeah.
And I do agree, though, that it is good to follow people specifically because, one, they're not going anywhere. Um,
Right.
you can, like, people will always say, well, just ignore them. It's like that doesn't work in the digital age. It doesn't.
No.
It never does.
Nope. Especially not for people like us who are on YouTube all the time.
Yeah, no. And again, like, and it didn't work even back before, like, social media.
Right.
And and when I look at people who do give advice like that, just don't pay attention. I'm like, guys, has that ever worked? Like, and
Right.
you're gonna tell, and like, if you have a kid, don't go there. They're gonna go there. They're
Yeah.
gonna want to go there.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
they're just that's an inbred thing into, I think, human beings as a whole. Um, but I do agree with you that so many of the hosts, in fact, Matt Walsh, I think, even in particular, actually admitted that his inflaming, he said, look, this is a good strategy. This is how we have to win. I think he said it when, I think it was the Dylan Mulvaney situation where he was like he insulted them, and even his base was like, dude, calm down. And then they were like, and then after that, he was like, no, this is a good strategy. And I'm like, okay, well, you literally admitted this. It's
Oh
just,
yeah.
and
If you People will tell you who they are. They'll tell you.
yeah, and listen to them at that
Yep.
point. Yeah, so,
Yes. Yeah.
but yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's really funny too. And but yeah, I will also, again, I did promise you a private video about something funny that I'll show you about Bill Gothard, because I know that he's your least favorite theologian, I think, or at least one of them. But
He's one of them. Joel Osteen's pretty high up there.
oh, who? Sorry.
Joel Osteen.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't like him either. Good. So that we actually do agree on fully. Um, but yeah, no, there's tons of stuff we could say back and forth about this. But yeah, no, and I think also that because one of the things that I loved, of course, about going to, like, my specific college, even though it was a Christian university, like, I did know pretty much what other people believed. Like, they didn't hide things from us. I mean, it wouldn't do us any favors anyway. But and they did say many things that were a bit like, you know, like, oh goodness, what is this? Now, I knew some of those things, but even I was like, who had studied like various arguments before this, was like, oh wow, I did not know that, or that sort of thing. But and there's countless different perspectives, and and again, I learned very quickly that people who say, well, it's obviously this way, are usually wrong, because, like, literally in succession, people told me, well, this is obviously true, and then this is obviously true, and they were in the same room, and I'm like, well, guys, all four of you are saying this is obviously true, and you're saying different things, so you can't all four obviously be right. Like,
Right. And that's a tactic. It
yeah,
goes back to the Matt Walshes of the world. When they say, obviously, Eric, that's how it is, people think, oh, if I disagree with him, I'm stupid because it's
yeah,
obvious. And even though I don't see it, that's a me problem. And it's like, no, no. he just used a word. He just
Yeah.
used the word obvious. That's it. He just used that
Yeah.
vocabulary word.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other conservative tactic is so funny because it's in that same vein where, because I'm again more centrist. I don't like either political label. I don't like denominational labels either because ultimately one of them has like a stereotype or something that people are going to think that I think when I don't.
Right. Right.
Um, uh, but then there's also they keep saying they've used this line over and over again. Well, I just believe what everybody believed until 5 minutes ago, and I'm like, well, you've been saying that for years. So clearly, even in your imaginary world where nobody said that, it's clearly been more than 5 minutes. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just I don't know. It's just but it's just honestly watching so many of these communities. And you rightly said there's so much bad advice in there. It's almost like just again, to use a karate analogy, it's like watching white belts spar with each other. Like they just keep doing the same things and they keep missing and they keep like and I'm like there are like 10 openings or 10 different ways to do this and you're not doing any of them. But I can forgive that.
It's
There,
like
you know,
it's like watching people kick each other on the parking lot who haven't even signed up for class or gotten a gi yet.
yup,
Like those,
yup,
they're the ones out on the parking lot, and they're gonna tell everyone they went to taekwondo or they
that's
went
right.
to
Yeah,
karate earlier, and they didn't even. They
no,
just kicked each
no,
other on the parking lot, and they think it's the same thing.
not how it works. But
We should one of these days we should talk about martial arts because I used to teach Muay Thai and I used to
oh
take
really?
jujitsu. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it is good too. And again, there's totally tons of different. Well, even going into that online space, there's even so much stupid crap with that. But
I always had a rule when I was online dating that if they mentioned jujitsu in their profile, I did not speak to them. Because that meant they liked Joe Rogan, they'd never actually done jujitsu, and they were probably gonna like try to quote Rick and Morty to me or something.
yeah, no. So, but it's been great having you. It's been great and awesome. And again, we should definitely do this again.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll pick even a more focused topic. I know we got off on a few tangents, but that's fine. That's why we're here,
yeah,
and all the better for it. So,
yeah. Thanks for having me. If you ever want to like dig into a controversial topic,
totally.
like I'm here for it because I'm a nice person.
Oh yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
straight for you. I won't attack you or anything. I won't send anybody after you. But yeah, if you ever want to talk about atheist stuff or Christian stuff or like dig into like controversial topics or political stuff, I'm always happy to bounce ideas.
totally. Yeah, and I know that this political situation now is going to be a dumpster fire, of course, from here till November, and probably a lot further than that.
Yes, which is shocking because like truly I did not think it could get more dumpster fire. I
Oh
really
yeah,
didn't. And
yeah,
then man did it. Like
yeah. No,
whoa.
no. There's like honestly, so many people do strive to better themselves, but Trump, in my view, he just strives to go lower and lower and lower, and then he keeps trying to surpass his previous level again and again and again until he's hit the Earth's core, and it's
Yes.
just,
Yes.
I'm just like, because I got tired of saying this because my dad and stepmom, we all just talk so much about this, and we're just like, I just got tired of saying it over and over again. I got tired of saying there's a new level. I got tired of saying I have no words, and I got tired of saying I've just run out of phrases at this point. I'm just like it's this.
It do be that way,
Yes,
unfortunately. Yeah,
yes,
now it's gotten to the point where I'm just like when somebody says it can't get worse, I go, never say that again.
no,
Never say that again. I
no.
have yet to see that be true in my lifetime. Never say that again.
Yeah, no. It can get worse. And it almost certainly will at least a few more times.
Oh yeah, man. We're millennials, man. We're gonna see it all. I'm
Oh
strapping in. Yep.
no, definitely. But yeah, no. But thanks so much, Sydney. You're the best. And
Yeah, no
again,
problem.
guys, if you want to check out my nearly 2 hour talk with Sydney that I did on her channel, you can go subscribe and go look at her. So definitely check that out. So
Thanks.
awesome. So God bless you so much.